Okay, so we're back for number 4. Part I didn't tell you this, even though we were just talking off camera before, is that I'm realizing that part of the purpose of these conversations and these recordings is that I need help in life, but also I realize that there are people younger than me who are worse off than me, who have even less confidence in whatever. Like, speaking at this level is going to help the guy who's 1 year behind, 5 years behind. If my confidence is a 3, there's some guys who's got confidence at a 1 or a 0.5. So I want to help myself, but also those guys who are a few steps behind.
100%.
So for the audience, this is my friend Greg. We met at the valet, and the reason I wanted to bring him on is because he's a very hardworking guy, and that's I feel like my biggest holdback in life, that I'm lazy. Like, I grew up with a sense of entitlement because I was religious, and I thought, if I was just good enough, I prayed enough, God would provide. And it turned out that's just not the way the world works. I mean, even if you are religious, try just praying. So
fortunately,
what I want to do is talk to Greg a little bit about. Also, Greg is an immigrant from Poland.
That's correct.
How old were you when you came here?
So the first time, about 6 years old.
Okay.
6 years old, we came, and it was kind of an empty promise. We were chasing for the better life.
Mm-hmm.
Father said, he had a chance to work, to get a better job, and brought us here just for temporary means. That's how it started. Mm-hmm. And then turns out we ended up staying here.
So you weren't trying to stay?
That wasn't the initial, at least not what I was told initially. And I don't think my dad knew either. He got the chance to come here and work for a year in his profession that he had, same profession in Poland, but making 10 times as much.
Okay.
And then he found a way to get my mother and me here as well, kind of try it out. Always promised us that we would go back, and it's not how it works. Our country was still politically not there.
So you were 5, so this was like early 90s?
Early 90s, 93, 94.
Okay. So there was, the former Soviet Union countries hadn't found their own footing yet.
It was pretty much, like the wall came down in Berlin. Mm-hmm. Soviets kind of let us do your thing now. So we're a free country, free nation. But no one really understood what that meant.
Yeah.
What that means to be free, and we didn't have the systems in place for real capitalism to function. Mm-hmm. So we were just on our own. A lot of early 90s were a crazy time in Poland. I mean, a lot of hooliganism and mafia and things like that. Stuff you see on the movies, it was pretty much going on there. So my father he made the right choice. Yeah. He did what was best for his family. So I can't even imagine what was going through his head to take that risk, to come to a whole new world.
Yeah. For my parents, it was my dad, well, he was a kid, but his mom, like, it was in the early, like, 1 or 2 or 3 years after Castro took over. She just saw things were not going a good direction and took the family out. And then my mom just was really poor, like, not enough food to eat, no shoes to go to school, like, just, that's kind of like, I feel like a worldwide standard of poor, not like First World Poor, American poor, whatever.
Definitely the poor here is a lot different.
Yeah. So the plan was always to stay here. Mm-hmm. So did you kind of, how long was it before you realized, like, we're not going back?
It was a few years, actually, because my parents kind of, I don't want to say tricked me, but they would allow me to go back to Poland every summer. Mm-hmm. So I knew that last day of school here, I had a plane ticket to go home. Mm-hmm. So I always looked at America as, you make your money here, you study here, but home is always Poland. So I'd have my group of friends waiting for me. They knew that I was on my way. It was special, and I'm thankful that I got to experience that, because I got to live 2 worlds simultaneously. But it definitely took me, I mean, there's still days that I hold on to that idea of, well, one day I'll return,
Yeah.
But I'm 33. I have a family. I have my own kids. It's a lot harder now I have to uproot everything that I've built here to go back to this home.
Yeah, because that's only home for you.
That's the only home for me. I mean, I love Texas. I love America. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm grateful.
But I mean, your wife and your kids, their home is here.
Their home is here to them. Their home is here.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a weird dynamic, and I mean, I took them to Poland a few years back, and even my kids asked me like, "Well, Daddy, why don't we just buy a house here?
Mm-hmm.
We like it here." They don't understand that. I mean, of course, I would love to do that, but it's a lot more difficult. Now their grandparents are here. All their family is here. So what do you do?
I think you told me maybe the first day we met that you didn't speak English when you came over. Is that true?
No English, zero.
Okay, but you look like everyone else.
I look like
was that odd?
That's the funny thing, right? So that was I think we spoke about that story where I came to school. I had no idea. All I could say was my father and I, we would joke around because in America when people ask you, how are you? You say fine.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that in Poland. If someone asks you how you're doing, they want to know how you're doing. So here, I remember practicing with my dad. How are you? Fine. And then we would just laugh. We thought it was the most hilarious thing ever because it's like nobody cares how you feel.
Yeah.
But they're asking, and you're telling them you're fine, even though your dog might have just died. You lost your job, but you're fine. No matter what, you just say you're fine. And no one really cares how you feel.
Yeah.
So it's kind of again, weird dynamic how that works. And so when I first came here, it was no English, and I would just sit there, in kindergarten the first time, and nothing, no idea. And then had a couple little issues. I tried to run away from school actually, and it was almost successful. Made it all the way out of the campus. They didn't know what to do with me because they were like, who's this kid? And I was just terrified. I was freaking out.
And you just had to be there all day, and you didn't even understand the language?
I had no idea, and I actually had a kid that was, we had to sit on these little areas, right, Indian style,
mm-hmm.
and this little kid kept poking me with a thumbtack, and I couldn't tell the teacher, and he just thought it was the funniest thing ever, and I'm like, what am I even doing here? Like, my parents brought me here, so I resented them for that at first, and I mean, he just every day, he would come and just poke me, and then finally, I would, raise my hand, yell at the teacher. She's like, what are you saying? I don't know what you want, kid. So I just, I did what I thought anybody would do at the time. I just smashed his head into a table, right? And
I wish I had done that more often in retrospect.
Well,
I mean, you have to do that sometimes.
You had to do it. I mean, and I didn't do anything to the kid. He knew he could get away with it. So he was evil little kid, or how I saw it back then. And I mean, I just smashed his head into a table, he's crying, whatever, bleeding, and then they take me to the principal's office. And I mean, it doesn't matter to me. All the kids are looking at me like, he's a bad kid. I was just scared. Mm-hmm. So then, my parents come and all this, and I was like, how did y'all even get a hold of my parents? This is me living in that Eastern world. How do you have their number? I don't have my parents' number. How did you call them? This is a setup, right? Like, just backwards, and then they put me in an ESL class. Well, English second language class in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be mostly Mexican kids. So they put me in there with Mexican kids, and all the Mexican kids are looking at me like, what's wrong with this white guy? This white boy can't speak English. He can't speak Spanish. What's wrong with him? He can't speak his own language. But that's when I kind of grew to love the whole Hispanic culture, because once they realized that there was nothing wrong with me and they heard my story, they're the ones that actually took me in. And then here I am, my kids are half Mexican, years later. But that's always remained the same, where I don't know if it's the family values in the culture, or the fact that a lot of Mexicans are Catholic, just like Polish people. I mean, I don't know what it was, but they're the ones that took me in.
Yeah.
And
I feel like my ideal woman would be like either Mexican or like some variety of like first generation American, like from an immigrant family. Like I think I could be with like an Indian girl, or I don't know, just whoever, like her parents are like sober, hardworking immigrants. She comes here a little corrupted
and sees it. Yeah, she sees what it took, but at the same time, that's kind of like my sister's that way. She was born here, 7 years younger. So she saw everything. She saw the mistakes that I did growing up. She was like, okay, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Okay, that was a bad idea. So she turned out great. I'm very proud of my sister, and that's it's just funny because she had that kind of path to be like, okay, let's not do that. And then she had to, of course, work work hard herself in what she's doing, but at least she had that, kind of idea of what not to do. Whereas with me, it was just trial and error.
Yeah.
Get in there. My parents had no idea how the school system worked, how college worked, how anything worked. So I was not very prepared. All I knew was that if I didn't go to college and get a degree of some sort, that was going to be a letdown to my father.
It's funny. My mom, she didn't really. So my dad was very bourgeois, like in Cuba. So even though he left when he was a little kid, he kind of had. I know he was steeped in that culture, and so becoming middle class was like a step down.
Gotcha.
But he could accommodate himself well to that culture. Whereas my mom, she didn't know what it was to be like middle class, but she, I guess, absorbed like you have to go to college. And one funny thing she said to me growing up was like, Pablo, I'm afraid you're going to be just like every other Mexican, waiting tables or whatever. And then like here I am at 30 is like landscaper, factory worker, valet. It's like every immigrant job stereotype. But in a way that's good for me, I think, because since 2020, I've only had like decently hard jobs. Like 2020, I worked at a factory. Then I was landscaper, then construction, landscaping again. And that job I just quit. So when I met you, it was, I don't know, 6 months to a year ago.
Yeah, not that long ago when you really look at it.
So at that point, you were telling me about like picking up shifts at Amazon. You were valeting. You were either getting your real estate license or we're just starting real estate.
Yeah,
and like one other gig. And basically the way you described it is like you're working 7 days a week.
Yeah, it's 7 days. Yeah, it's and I mean, of course, I've taken my foot off the gas in some aspects to be able to focus on the main ideas and goals now.
Okay.
But for me to allow myself to get to that point, there was a time in my life where it was 7 days, sometimes 3 shifts. And so there was times where it's funny that the location that we're at now, I used to sleep in places like this.
Yeah, I love parking garages.
Me too.
And for the audience, like our job as valet, like one of our clients is the restaurant that's just outside this parking garage.
So it's funny that it's kind of surreal to sit here, we're recording a podcast. And again, I used to sleep in places like this. Just wonder, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Why do I want to work 7 days, 3 shifts? I mean, I have a college degree, and one of my jobs was a corporate job in one of these, skyscrapers, right?
So why did you have to work? Want to?
Had to. I was in a previous relationship, and I mean, again, relationships are 50-50, right? So I'm not gonna say that it's all her fault, my fault, whatever. We'll just leave it at that, right?
Sure. Okay.
But I was in a relationship that I shouldn't have been in as long as I was. We both knew that, and it got expensive, let's just say, to stay in it. Learn debt.
Materially, emotionally?
Materially, everything.
Okay.
Everything. Pretty much everything. And it got to the point where I needed to find a way out financially, but be able to do that. I had 2 kids at the time, so I couldn't just leave. That's one thing and you see that a lot here in America, is the father just leaves. I don't care. I've got 5 kids. It's like a joke. I got 5 kids from 5 baby mamas, right? Yeah. I mean, anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. But to take care of the kids and remain in their lives, because they're the next generation. So they learn from us. If the father leaves, what are they going to do? They're going to do the same thing. They're going to think it's okay to leave. And so that was my biggest thing. I did not want to leave them in a situation where they were on their own. So I was like, I looked at it like, you know what? It's a sacrifice.
Yeah. And I think that whether it comes from religion or whatever your whatever your ethics are, like that's the difference between like being poor and being poor, but like not having a poor mentality.
Yeah.
Like, you leave your kids, they're gonna have that structure. They're gonna just by default understand that it's okay to abandon probably your most important responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so they'll do that to the next generation, and then they'll be poor.
And it just keeps going. And then you see that. I mean, you see so much of that here, and then you just see the shallow mentality of people just all about materialistic things. All about just stuff and things. Can't hold a conversation, have nothing to say, nothing to contribute, never read a book, nothing. But they got a Range Rover, so they must be smart. They're successful.
Well, how many people of those are there? I mean, maybe they have a friend who has a Range Rover and they have their story on Instagram, but like
there's that as well, yeah.
But
well, I mean, just thinking back to valet days, I mean, we see it all the time, right? And the thing is, then once I learned about more so financial literacy and what it takes to get approved even for a car or to lease a car, it doesn't take that much. So if that's what you care about, you can get your credit high enough, go lease you a Range Rover, barely make your payment, and I guess you look cool. And you're impressing all these people, but you're really miserable inside. Yeah. So you're kind of feeding off of each other, and you see so much of it. Versus, why don't you stop worrying about all these other people? Focus on yourself, your family, your internal, and all that stuff will come.
Yeah.
Right? The money stuff comes, but I think it comes from within. You have to be right inside for it to actually mean something and continue. I mean, we can go make money right. I mean, we can go rob that guy right now, make some money, but it's not the correct way to do it.
It's not profitable.
It's not. Yeah.
In the long run.
In the long run, yeah. In the long run, it's not. And that's the thing. There was times in my life where I had fairly good money, and there was times that I had nothing. I was negative. Again, sleeping in a parking garage, right? And then putting on that fake facade, walking into the corporate office, and everyone thought that I was just one of them. But I wasn't, because as soon as 5 o'clock hit, they would go to the bar to happy hour. I would go valet.
Well, in a way, it's like being the white kid who doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
It's like you're among them. You look like everyone else,
100%.
But like you are like, there's a very strong invisible wall between you and everyone else.
There's definitely a wall. I mean, there's definitely a wall, and it's, I mean, another story. I worked for a oil and gas company, and if one of those guys in particular, if he listens to this, he'll remember this story. You know, I walked in, again, a bunch of just regular white American dudes, mostly, from a highly accredited university. Most of them, that's where they came from. I didn't go to that university for starters, but my name's Greg, right?
Yeah.
I'm a white guy. Shake hands, everything's good. We get to the HR office, and they start going over more paperwork and stuff, and they name some of the other guys, and they get to me, and they say, well, how do you say your name? And I'm like, oh man, I was in, right? I was in, but you got me with the how do you say your name again? And that always tricks everything, because of course I go by Greg here, but when you pull up my license, it doesn't say Greg. And so the other three guys kind of paused, and they're like,
okay, that's not a culture I'm familiar with. Like, in what way do you think that would make a difference?
Not necessarily make a difference, but just based on that wall, right? That invisible wall where right away, I'm in. We're together. Everybody's on the same page. But then that little glimpse of, how do you say your name? And then when I pronounce my name correctly, the other two guys, which thought we had some rapport, we were cool now, they gave a little like, now they're questioning, okay, wait, where are you from? We thought you were, they almost felt deceived. And I've become pretty good friends with two of those guys. One of them, really good friend to this day, and we always joke about that. He was like, man, as soon as you said your name, we were like, what the hell's this guy? Like, who have we been talking to? So it almost felt like they allowed me in, thinking I was someone else. And he's been honest about one of them's been honest about that. And he definitely said that. He was like, yeah, we just felt like we kind of let you in, and then we had to put our guard up a little bit to figure you out a little bit more. But ever since then, I mean, we're great friends, and I think I've been accepted, if you're listening. So.
Oh man. Well, that's interesting, dude. I like, speaking of skin color, like if this gets viewership beyond my friends who already know me, I'm Mexican Cuban. But obviously, just walking down the street, you'd see me and think like, oh, that's just, regular white American. And I mean, for a large part, I'm like so assimilated into mainstream white American culture. Like the awkwardness comes to like having been so assimilated that it's like hard to go back to my own culture.
That's the other problem.
Like, one, I remember growing up going to like the like quinceañeras and just like parties at my relatives, and they're all mostly dark. I don't know, well, we're like the one light-skinned family in like my extended family, and I remember there's a good portion of my childhood where my Spanish had just deteriorated to the point where I could barely say anything past hello. I'm good. How are you? And now I'm like to a level where you would think I was fluent if you didn't completely understand Spanish, but I was speaking to like just a dude who only spoke Spanish. You could tell like my grammar's a little off and lacking sometimes, and I'm not saying things exactly like a native would.
So you can catch it really quick, which is there's a lot of Polish people like that. Same thing, where they've been here long enough, and they go back to Poland. And even me, I search for vocabulary. There's bigger words that I don't use every day that I'm trying to speak, and you get a little stutter. And it's like, oh man, I forgot that word. How do you say crap? You know?
And there's like a lot of shame in me, and I think other people are looking at me and like judging me, but I think it only becomes shameful if like I consent to like my own shame, and then kind of tell them you should also be looking
because
at
they
me
don't.
Shameful.
And I just learned this recently, because we're going back to confidence, right? I had the same problem. I would walk in a room, and all of a sudden, I would just prejudge myself for the people in the room. They don't know you, right? Don't give them that much power.
Yes.
So you're viewing, because I had a big problem with even with valet sometimes, because being a valet, you know, you're working for people, right? You're getting their doors, right? You're parking their car while they're going out to eat. We're standing in the rain, standing in the heat. So it's hard. It does mess with your mind a little bit, because it puts you down to second class now. It doesn't matter that some of these accounts I made double, triple what the people were making that are actually going inside. A lot of those people can be in debt, barely affording these dinners.
Yeah.
While I had tons of money and a side business, all kinds of things. But just the perceived notion was that they're above me and I'm working for them.
Yeah.
And so then I would take that with me when I was off the clock from valet or Amazon or FedEx or whatever job, right? I would take that with me. Now where I'm out in street clothes, I would kind of beat myself down a little bit, like, oh, I'm not worthy of being in this area with these people.
Yeah, I really internalized that a lot too, not from valet really, but that became a natural fit, like being kind of a subservient role.
Yeah, and it's BS. Like you got to lose it. And then I struggled with this my whole life too. But just recently, the more I've been kind of reading and following a lot of these mentors, especially in the whole real estate game that I've gotten into now, I've met so many great people that, because the barrier to entry in real estate isn't that much, you know, I can't get into Harvard, right? But I can get my real estate license. And yet I've met people that have not only made more money than a lot of these people, but they have the mentality and the money and the success all together. And a lot of the best ones, the top dogs that I'm involved with, that are mentoring me, that's what they're starting with. Before we ever looked at a contract, before we ever looked at how to make money, how to sell a house, buy a house, it was, hold on, work on your mental first. It starts with your mental. It starts with your physical, your body, your mind. And then, because in real estate, for example, we deal with there's so much money involved. People get so emotional. It's a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. 1 second they're happy they got a house. Next second there might be a delay, or something happens, or something breaks. Now they hate what they bought. They just spent their whole life savings on this. Now, was it the right decision? So if I can't handle my own emotions, there's no way I can handle.
Well, in a way, it's like being a father, and you have to, you can't let your own nervousness affect your leadership, and then in a sense you're being the leader / the father in that situation, and you have to tell them it is not that bad. Yeah. Stay calm. We'll fix this. Whatever, this up and down is going to pass, and you have to, in a way, be
and you have to keep going. And I found the more like stern sometimes I am, people respect it more. Yeah. So sometimes I'm like, man, I'm being kind of rude, but you have to be stern, like a father figure almost. And look, you got to trust this. I think we talked about this last time, like kind of envisioning the duck. The duck just calmly paddles through the lake, right?
Yeah.
Or the pond. But underneath, he's flapping his freaking, feet, flappers, right? So that's how I try to envision, like, on the outside, you have to be calm and lead the way. Even though inside, you might be, all kinds of stuff's going on. But you also have to understand that what you're going through today, it's all about perspective, right? My worst day might be somebody's best day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I learned that from another mentor. With just, you might be complaining. I had a flat tire last night, actually, nail in the sidewall. 10 o'clock at night in Dallas. I don't want to change this tire, but what am I going to do? It's not going to change anything if I get angry and pop my other 2-3 tires, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to change anything, so I just got to change it. And thankfully, I had a good friend, Leo. He just jumps out of his car and runs out with his jack, and we're just having fun. Changed it in 10 minutes. I think it was a record. So, and then this morning, I go, get it changed, had a tire warranty, $16.50. So I could have completely just lost my mind last night, which in my old days, I probably would have, Probably would have just slashed my other tire and flipped the car over, I hate my life, right?
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, it's a tire. It's made out of rubber. There's air in it. It's gonna pop.
All right. So let's segue into kind of what you've in a way introduced. I'm trying to move to a different country in a way, staying here, but changing who I'm around, changing my own mentality. You, in that situation, you would change your mentality. You weren't going to make a bad situation worse by panicking and getting angry. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, for whatever reason, you had met Leo, and he was a solid dude in that situation and helped you.
He was excited to help.
Yeah, so. And that's a good friend, and not everybody has those. But for whatever reason, you're in a position in your life where you have a Leo to help you out, and that's what I'm trying to do right now too. And then my mentality, as far as money and changing my position in life, is like I now once again have less money than I ever have, because even though I've been working harder and making more money, I got into a wreck, and so I'm like $6,000 in debt. I paid this lady, but now I owe my sister because I borrowed the money from her. But I do not feel poor, even though objectively I'm in the red, like $5,000.
Right.
Because I'm willing to work harder now. I don't know how, but like I don't know exactly how to describe it. But my mentality has shifted. Part of it's confidence. Part of it is looking not just at the number, but kind of looking at things as a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I have a trailer now. I can start my own valet business. I can start my own landscaping company with that. I've got a work ethic that's better than before, so I can go out to another landscaping company and get another job or work at a factory or whatever. And what I keep on telling myself is that I'm going to use this work ethic that I've been developing and apply it to my own projects, like with my writing, my art, and finally I'm doing this, the podcast.
That's why I'm proud of you for doing that. Because,
thank you.
Again, it's don't worry about just the money. It's about the fulfillment. It took me a long time. It took me the shutdown of the world to realize that, really. To really go deep into this mindset, the world shut down. Mm-hmm. So I always, didn't matter what I did. If I had a corporate job or running a business, I would go valet as much as I could, just because the money, it's just free money to drive cars. Ever since the first day I started valeting, I was like, wait a minute. You want me to drive your Ferrari and you're going to give me $20?
Oh, for me, like,
how is this a real job?
I'm not a car guy, but I just love, like, in construction, is like you get to go into other people's homes, and you're not a person in that sense. They don't filter themselves like they would if you were a guest.
Yes.
So like you see the old man in the basement watching TV, and they don't try to, like, I don't know, make it look less sad. And with the valets, you get to, maybe not here as much, but with my other valet job at the hospital, it was more like middle class to poor people, and you just get to step for 1 minute into somebody's life and see how they live.
That's true. That, you know what? That's
which is really good for me, as like my main aspirations, writer, artist, and this is kind of along the podcast here, is like along the writing vein, like getting to know people, because these are conversations I would like to have at work, but one, most people don't want to go that deep, and two,
Yeah.
I couldn't, even though you are that guy, I couldn't have this conversation at work because, you know, every 5 minutes you gotta go get a car.
Well, and then going back to valet in that sense, right, that's kind of, I think, I mean, I've learned so much from sales to just how to be a chameleon and be able to, in that split second, someone pulls up to the valet stand in their $100,000, $200,000 car, and you have to make them feel comfortable in a split second for them to give you the keys to that car. And so that's helped me in sales so much to where I could just jump in usually and feel comfortable with anyone and everyone. And then again, like you said, then you sit in their car and you might see a picture of their kid or what they just ate or something, right? A wrapper, a bag, and like you're in their world. Because a car is kind of a personal place, especially here. We drive so much. So you see so much things in people's cars and they're trusting you to not steal anything, not touch anything.
Which is amazing.
It's amazing.
I wouldn't let somebody valet.
No, and so that's how I am. I mean,
even though I've never stolen shit, but
yeah,
like,
but I've seen. I mean, we have stories. That's a whole. We could do 10-hour podcast of just valet stories.
Oh, we should do that.
We should just do just a valet story.
A special edition, because those.
Because I've got stories for days, and but I felt almost, or even when someone parks and we put them in VIP. And somebody comes and leans on the car or is taking pictures of the car. Mm. I always treated that as if it was my car. So I tell them, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you leaning on someone's car? That car might be worth more than your house.
Yeah.
And you're just doing it just to show off on your Instagram, right? It's not your car. And if they start mouthing off or trying to fight, which happens all the time, I say, okay, that's fine. I just go get the owner. Don't yell. It's not my car. Don't yell at me. I'm going to go get the owner. And let's see how they feel about you laying on this. And I've had so many people just thank me or literally give me $100. Like, I've never seen any other valet do that, man. Here,